During the making of the BBC Two's French Connection documentary last year, I spent quite a lot of time hanging around with New York cops, many of whom had advised on or even cameoed in some of the numerous police procedural thrillers which filled the cinema screens of the 70s. At one point I mentioned the name Serpico, the true life story of a cop's battle against internal corruption, which garnered Oscar nominations for screenwriters Waldo Salt and Norman Wexler, and for leading man Al Pacino, who made a splash as the honest man in a dishonest world. Their reaction was interesting, particularly from one former detective first grade who said, with some venom, when there are so many bad guys doing bad things, why would anyone want to make a movie about some good guys doing bad things? I mean, what is the point? Well, that, of course, is exactly the point.
Who are your playmates? Hey, Frank, you want a piece of this?
No, I want to fill out the arrest card.
As recounted originally in Peter Massey's best-selling book, Frank Serpico was simply a lone idealist, unable to function in an environment in which the cops were as crooked as the criminals, and who wound up allegedly getting shot in the face for refusing to take backhanders. And I'm not spoiling the plot by telling you this, because that's exactly the point at which the film starts, with Serpico being stretchered into hospital immediately after that near-fatal accident, leaving us in no doubt as to where this story's going.
Car 2118. Call Greenpoint Hospital and tell them we're bringing in a wounded cop.
It's probably a perverse tribute to the success of the film that Serpico managed to annoy as many people as it did. In the US, Stanley Kaufman sniffed at the time that it was unmemorable and not terribly interesting, while Judith Cass was still complaining nearly 10 years later that it gratuitously denigrates the entire police force by seeing its protagonists as either black or white, good or bad. Well, certainly in the hands of Pacino and director Sidney Lumet, Serpico is elevated from undercover misfit to resurrected Christ figure, replete with hippie beard, flowing robes and low-toned philosophical musings aplenty.
Officer Serpico, report, sir.
That fucking thing on your lip, it goes. And get a haircut.
Sir.
That's an order. You look like an asshole with dentures.
Personally, I think he comes across as a royal pain in the arse, but I'm not sure that isn't partly intentional. Yes, Pacino's Serpico is a whiner, a self-righteous, self-pitying prig, all the things that New York detective I mentioned disliked him for being. But he's still right, and the system which refuses to take his complaints seriously is still wrong. And maybe the whiff of martyr burning is always necessary to provoke a breath of fresh air.
I think it's time that we started to communicate more on the streets. You know, the way it is, we're totally isolated, sir. I mean, we're completely out of touch with what's happening. An undercover cop walks around in disguise wearing black shoes and white socks. Everybody knows who he is.
You made your point.
As for the players, Lumet is ably aided and abetted by a handsome supporting cast, including such diverse faces as Tony Roberts, John Randolph and M. Emmett Walsh, with uncredited bit parters including F. Murray Abraham and a budding Judd Hirsch. Ultimately, though, it's Pacino's baby, turning him into a bedroom pin-up for every angry young American boy who needed someone to believe in the early 70s, an antidote to Tricky Dicky and his minions in a country sorely in need of heroes.